Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about the women who are reshaping our world. Coming up, with Donald Trump re-entering the White House, what will it mean for American women this time around? I'll be asking Carter Sherman, the reproductive health reporter for The Guardian US. Also, the gender divide in South Korea becoming all the more evident during this latest political crisis over the arrest of President Yoon Suk Yeol, with young men protesting against his impeachment while their female peers call for him to be detained. And the rise of esports or video gaming in China, and how once again women are finding themselves shut out of one of the world's fastest growing sectors. But first, and with Donald Trump returning to the White House for the second time, there are genuine fears among activists and women's groups that the status of women will be eroded further. In his first administration, Trump attacked women's rights, including undermining access to birth control, stopping efforts to end the gender pay gap, while appointing judges to the Supreme Court, which resulted in the eventual demise of Roe v. Wade. So, what should we expect this time around? Joining me now from New York is Carter Sherman, the reproductive health reporter for The Guardian US. Carter, thanks again for your time. So, just how grim will it be for women in America in Trump 2.0 era?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember about this upcoming Trump administration is that unlike the last time, there are very few guardrails. You know, when Trump took power in 2016, he wasn't necessarily expecting to win. He didn't have the people behind him that he has now. And he was restrained by things like Roe v. Wade when it came to restricting abortion access. This time, he is much more prepared to assume power. He has much more latitude to erode access to things like abortion and birth control. And I think for women in America, a lot in their lives could change very quickly and very suddenly.
And of course, you know, we can talk about abortion rights, but there's also access to the birth control pill as well. Just take us through what it will mean in those two areas.
Well, for birth control, I think one of the things that we are most likely to see is dramatic changes to the United States' oldest and largest family planning program. This program is called Title X, and it provides free to low-cost access to things like STI screenings and birth control for millions of people every year. Now, under the first Trump administration, he basically created policies that made it impossible for many providers to stay in that network, and they left, resulting in more than 1 million fewer people getting care from Title X. I think we're really likely to see similar changes this time around, if not expanded changes. As far as abortion rights, it's very possible that the Trump administration could use a 19th century anti-vice law to effectively create a nationwide abortion ban. This anti-vice law, which is not widely enforced right now, was basically held back by Roe v. Wade, but it bans the mailing of abortion-related materials, which means that if it were to be widely enforced, it would stop people from not only mailing abortion pills, but it would stop abortion clinics from being able to even receive the equipment that they need to do their jobs. If that were to happen, it's an open question how long abortion providers can stay in business.
So should we take everything that's written in Project 2025, of course, that conservative blueprint for legislation under Trump, as an accurate roadmap for what lies ahead?
Well, both of those policies I just laid out, as far as enforcing that 19th century law to some extent and changing Title X, those are both in Project 2025. Now, Project 2025 is a 900 plus page document, so it's hard to say how many of those policies are actually going to be materializing. But when Trump was campaigning, he was trying to distance himself from Project 2025. Since he won election, he has started hiring many of the people who wrote Project 2025. And it's hard to see that these people wouldn't necessarily carry those policies with them into the administration.
So what other areas will also be impacted, Carter?
Well, Project 2025 does also talk about women and families in the workplace. And there are a number of suggestions that seem to suggest that women's ability to have access to childcare where they work could be undermined or dramatically changed. And I think we're going to be seeing whether or not those policies also end up impacting women's ability to work outside the home, to be people outside the home.
Yet we can't forget, can we, Carter, that a sizable chunk of women voted Donald Trump in. So why did that happen?
I mean, you would have to ask them. I think many of the people who voted for Donald Trump said that the economy was their biggest issue. I think one of the other things that happened is we had a number of abortion-related ballot measures, and although abortion was a top issue in the election, those ballot measures might have created a permission structure where people felt like they could both vote for Trump and vote in favor of abortion rights. So maybe women weren't necessarily making the connection about how a vote for Trump could ultimately impact their gendered rights.
And as well, Carter, the impact of his return is going to be felt way beyond American borders, such as the reinstatement of the global gag, which will impact women worldwide.
Right. Every time a Republican president retakes power, they re-implement something that advocates call the global gag rule, which reshapes the kind of money that the United States sends to reproductive health care projects across the globe, and effectively makes it much more difficult for any of those projects to have anything to do with abortion. Because of the United States' massive presence on the international stage, this means that women could have dramatically less access to reproductive care in many impoverished countries.
Carter, it's been great as always speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Next to South Korea, which is experiencing a political earthquake. Yoon Suk Yeol becoming the country's first sitting president to be arrested. As we've reported on the 51% before, a gender divide very much exists in this Asian country and became even more evident during this crisis, with predominantly young Conservative men railing against his impeachment, while mostly young women support his immediate detention. Charlie James has more.
In South Korea's patriarchal society, women have traditionally been expected to stay out of politics. But women, particularly young women, have been driving protests against conservative President Yoon Suk Yeol and his declaration of martial law. It's shown a spotlight on the country's polarized politics and the ideological gender gap among Gen Z Koreans.
I think women are more sensitive to social disasters and discrimination because they are socially vulnerable. So, as a woman, I've had many conversations with my friends about wage gaps and gender discrimination. But men in their 20s and 30s, even though they're in the same generation, have always disagreed with gender discrimination.
In the 2022 presidential election, 59% of men aged 18 to 29 voted for Yoon. Only 34% of women under 30 voted for him. Yoon has been accused of capitalizing on young men's fears, denying institutional discrimination against women, and promising to abolish the Ministry of Gender Equality. This rally in support of the suspended president is full of young men who feel the Democratic Party doesn't look out for their needs.
The Democratic Party is currently pushing for a comprehensive anti-discrimination law and other bills that are closely related to feminist ideology. So this seems to be the main factor in the current divisions between men and women, especially those in their 20s.
Yoon's supporters use political slogans such as "Make Korea Great Again" and "Stop the Steal," adopted from the rhetoric of U.S. President-elect Donald Trump, whose support from young men helped him retake the White House.
Staying in Asia, and the Chinese state media once described them as spiritual opium. I'm talking about video games, or as they're now referred to as esports. While China has become one of the world's largest markets for esports, women, not surprisingly, are struggling to access this fast-growing sector. Jennifer Ben-Brahim has more.
You may think the biggest challenge in the world of esports is too much screen time. But for many professional women players in China, it's sexism.
When you play a game, there's a chain of discrimination. If people know you're a girl, they're going to be mean to you.
Liu Anzi is just one of many players tackling trolls on and off screen. From accusations of cheating to making fun of their skills or looks. But discrimination is not just online, but structural. China is the biggest esports market in the world and generated more than $3.7 billion in revenue in 2024. Nearly 500 million viewers tuned in to watch sold-out online tournaments, with 90% of players being men. This boys' club has led to women like Liu closing ranks.
Now I feel more like a team leader. For me, proving myself at the championship is less important. Instead, I think I want to lead a team from bad times to good times.
These female-only teams compete in professional competitions, like the Honor of Kings Women's Open. It has a prize pool of $140,000. Just a drop in the ocean compared to the most prestigious and predominantly male competition, the King Pro League Grand Final. Winners took home just under $10 million.
Very few people pay attention to women esports clubs, even if we use online advertising and set up our own groups. If there's a bigger prize fund, more clubs will be attracted to take part.
Despite her family's support, Liu sees gaming as a hobby rather than a moneymaker. But with calls for increased investment from big gaming communities and more supportive government policies, it could be game, set and match for sexism in esports.
And that's it for this edition, so until our next show, bye for now.